The desperate pounding on Thaddeus Tucker's cabin door cut through the howling Montana winter like a knife, echoing in the solitary dwelling where he'd built a life for himself and his young daughter after his wife's passing 3 years prior. Outside, the February blizzard of 1878 showed no mercy, blanketing the landscape in treacherous white as far as the eye could see. "Pa, someone's at the door," 6-year-old Lily called out, her small voice carrying from where she played with her cloth doll by the fireplace. Thaddeus set down the hunting knife he'd been sharpening and reached for his revolver, tucking it into his waistband. Living 20 miles from the nearest town meant unexpected visitors were rare and rarely brought good news. "Stay back, Lily," he instructed, his weather-worn face set in concentration as he approached the door. The pounding continued, more desperate now, accompanied by what sounded like a woman's voice, though the howling wind made it impossible to discern her words. He unlatched the heavy wooden door, pulling it open just enough to see who stood on his porch. The sight that greeted him stole his breath. A woman, barely more than 20 years old, stood trembling before him. Her dress, once fine but now tattered, provided little protection against the brutal cold. Her face was pale as the snow around her, lips tinged blue, and dark hair whipping wildly around her face. But it was her eyes that caught him, deep hazel pools filled with equal parts desperation and determination. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I haven't eaten in days, anything, just a crust of bread." Before Thaddeus could respond, a blur of movement shot past his legs. Lily had ignored his warning and now flung herself forward, tiny arms wrapping around the stranger's legs in a fierce hug. "You're cold, miss. Come inside where it's warm," his daughter said, looking up at the woman with innocent concern. The stranger's eyes widened in surprise, her frozen hands hovering uncertainly above the child's golden head. "Lily, step back," Thaddeus said, though without real sternness. His daughter had her mother's heart. It was both her greatest strength and what worried him most. "But Pa, she's freezing." "You always say we help folks in need." Thaddeus looked from his daughter to the woman, noting the genuine shock in her expression at Lily's welcome. No outlaw or scam artist would look so undone by a child's kindness. "Come in before you freeze solid," he said, pulling the door wider. "I'm Thaddeus Tucker. This is my daughter, Lily. Willow Vance," she managed through chattering teeth as she stepped inside. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone lived out here. I thought I might." She stopped herself, swaying slightly. Thaddeus caught her arm, steadying her. "Sit by the fire. Lily, fetch a blanket." The little girl scampered off while Thaddeus guided Willow to a chair near the hearth. The woman's clothes were damp with snow, her thin frame shaking uncontrollably. "How long have you been out there?" he asked, stoking the fire to build it higher. "Since morning," she whispered, extending her hands toward the flames. "My horse. He couldn't go on in the storm. I had to leave him about 5 miles back." Thaddeus frowned. No horse meant no easy way to send her back wherever she'd come from. And no one traveled these parts in winter without serious reason. Lily returned with his thickest wool blanket, carefully draping it over Willow's shoulders. "Are you hungry? Pa made stew. It's venison. That means deer," she explained importantly. A ghost of a smile crossed Willow's blue-tinged lips. "That sounds wonderful. I'll get you some," Thaddeus said, moving to the iron pot hanging at the edge of the fireplace. As he ladled the rich stew into a wooden bowl, he observed their unexpected guest from the corner of his eye. Despite her bedraggled appearance, she carried herself with an educated air. Her hands, though chapped from cold, were slender and uncalloused, not a working woman's hands. And though her clothes were now weather-beaten, he recognized quality fabric and tailoring. This was no ordinary drifter. "Here," he said, handing her the bowl and a spoon. Eat slowly. Your stomach won't be ready for much if you've gone days without. Willow nodded, taking the bowl with trembling hands. She dipped her spoon in the stew and took a small bite, closing her eyes momentarily in what appeared to be pure relief. Thank you, she said softly. I can't remember the last time I had hot food. Lily settled on the floor beside Willow's chair, looking up at her with undisguised curiosity. Where did you come from? Do you have a little girl too? Why are you all alone? Lily, Thaddeus admonished gently. Let Miss Vance eat in peace. It's all right, Willow said, offering the child a warmer smile than before. I came from far away, Helena originally. And no, I don't have any children. Her eyes flickered to Thaddeus and then away quickly. I'm traveling to my aunt in Idaho. It was a reasonable explanation, but Thaddeus caught the slight hesitation in her voice. She was hiding something. Out here, secrets often meant trouble. Idaho's still a good 100 miles west, he said evenly. And the mountain passes will be snowed in until April at least. Willow's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. I didn't realize. Thaddeus watched her face fall as the reality of her situation became clear. Whatever plan she'd had, nature had rendered it impossible. You can stay with us, Lily declared, bouncing slightly in excitement. Can't she, Pa? The spare room is empty and she can help with the chickens and I can show her my special rock collection. And Lily, Thaddeus cut in, Miss Vance might have other plans. Willow set her bowl down, half-finished. Mr. Tucker, I don't want to impose. Perhaps there's a town nearby where I could find lodging until the weather clears. Nearest town is Pine Tree Junction, 20 miles southeast. No way to reach it in this storm. He gestured toward the window, where snow continued to fall in thick, swirling sheets. Storm like this could last days. Willow's shoulders slumped slightly. I see. You'll stay here, he decided, not unkindly. We've got the room, and sending you back out there would be murder, plain and simple. Relief flooded her features before she quickly composed herself. I insist on working for my keep. I can cook, clean, so we'll sort all that out tomorrow, Thaddeus said. For now, you need rest. Finish your food and I'll show you to the spare room. Lily clapped her hands together. This is just like in my storybook where the princess has to stay with the woodcutter. Willow smiled at the child, but Thaddeus noticed the flicker of unease in her eyes. Whatever had driven her out into a blizzard alone, on horseback, with nothing but the clothes on her back, it wasn't a fairy tale. As evening settled into night, Thaddeus showed Willow to the small second bedroom. It was sparsely furnished, just a narrow bed, a chest for clothing and a washstand, but it was clean and warm. It's not much, he said, lighting the small oil lamp on the bedside table. It's perfect, she replied sincerely. Mr. Tucker, I can't thank you enough. He nodded, uncomfortable with her gratitude. There's water in the pitcher. I'll have Lily bring you some night clothes. They'll be my late wife's, might be big on you, but they're clean. A shadow crossed Willow's face. I'm sorry about your wife. 3 years now, he said simply. Fever took her winter of 75. Willow nodded, and he saw recognition in her eyes, not pity but understanding. It made him wonder what losses she herself had endured. Get some rest, he said, moving toward the door. We can talk more in the morning. After settling Lily in bed with extra stories to calm her excitement over their visitor, Thaddeus sat alone by the dying fire, thinking. Taking in a stranger was risky, especially a woman clearly running from something. But the alternative was unthinkable. Whatever trouble followed Willow Vance, he'd deal with it when it came. Morning arrived with clearing skies but temperatures that remained well below freezing. Thaddeus rose before dawn as usual to stoke the fires and check on the livestock in the small barn attached to the cabin. He was surprised to find Willow already awake, dressed in her own clothes but wearing a shawl of his wife's, attempting to figure out the workings of his cast-iron stove. "You're up early," he commented, causing her to start slightly. "I wanted to make breakfast," she explained. "As thanks." "But your stove is different from what I'm used to." Thaddeus stepped forward, demonstrating how to adjust the damper. "Takes practice. House I grew up in, we cooked everything over an open hearth." "Where was that?" she asked, setting a pan on the now properly heating surface. "Kentucky, originally. Came out west after the war." She nodded, cracking eggs into the pan with surprising deftness. "You fought for the Union, last 2 years," he confirmed. "Young and foolish enough to think it mattered which side won." Willow glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "And now I think the only battles worth fighting are the ones that keep my daughter safe and fed." He reached for the coffee pot. "Speaking of battles, Miss Vance, I don't mean to pry, but a woman doesn't ride out into a blizzard without good reason." Her hand stilled momentarily before she resumed cooking. "No, I suppose not." When she didn't elaborate, he continued. "Whatever you're running from, you should know we're isolated here. No one's likely to come looking, especially not in winter. But if trouble is following you, I need to know what kind." Willow turned to face him, her composure fragile but holding. "It's not the law, if that's what you're asking. I've broken no laws." She hesitated, then added, "It's a man. My former fiancé. He's not who I thought he was." Thaddeus waited, giving her space to continue. "Edward Blackwell," she said, the name falling from her lips like poison. "His family owns half the businesses in Helena. We were to be married last week, but I discovered she broke off, visibly collecting herself. "He's not a good man, Mr. Tucker. He hurts people who displease him, and he enjoys it. When I tried to break our engagement, Her hand unconsciously rose to her cheek, where Thaddeus now noticed the fading yellow of a bruise partially concealed by her hair. Cold anger settled in his chest. "He hit you." She nodded once. "And promised worse if I tried to leave. Said no one would believe me over him anyway. He was right, his family owns the sheriff, the mayor, half the town council. So I waited until he left for a business trip, took what little money I had saved, and fled." "To your aunt in Idaho," a flicker of shame crossed her face. "There is no aunt. I just needed somewhere to go, somewhere far enough that he wouldn't follow." Thaddeus absorbed this information, considering its implications. A powerful man with a vendetta was dangerous, but winter in Montana created natural barriers even wealth couldn't easily overcome. "If he comes here, he'll regret it," Thaddeus said simply. For the first time, a genuine smile touched Willow's lips. "Thank you. But I don't intend to bring trouble to your door. Once the weather permits, I'll move on." The patter of small feet announced Lily's arrival, her face bright with excitement at finding their guest still present. "You're still here. I was afraid you might be a dream." Willow's expression softened as she looked at the child. "Not a dream, and I've made eggs for breakfast. With pepper?" Lily asked hopefully. "Pa always forgets the pepper." "With plenty of pepper," Willow confirmed, sharing a conspiratorial smile with the girl. Watching them, Thaddeus felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. His cabin had been functional since Maria's death, a place to eat, sleep, and shelter, but never truly a home. Something about Willow's presence made the difference palpable. Over the next week, the snow continued intermittently, making travel impossible but providing a sanctuary of isolation. Willow quickly found her place in their small household, proving herself capable with domestic tasks and endlessly patient with Lily's questions and games. Her education became apparent as she helped the girl with her letters and numbers, turning lessons into stories that had Lily begging for more. Thaddeus observed the transformation in both his home and his daughter with mixed emotions. Lily bloomed under Willow's attention, displaying a joyfulness he hadn't seen since her mother died. But he knew this arrangement was temporary, a necessary pause in Willow's flight from danger. On the 8th evening, after Lily had been tucked into bed, Thaddeus found Willow by the fire, mending one of his shirts with neat, even stitches. "You don't have to do that," he said, settling into the chair opposite her. "I want to," she replied, not looking up from her work. "It makes me feel useful." "You've been more than useful," he assured her. "Lily adores you." At this, Willow's hand stilled and she raised her eyes to his. "She's a wonderful child. You've done well with her, especially alone." "Done my best," he acknowledged. "Hasn't always been enough." "It has," Willow insisted. "She's kind, curious, brave, everything a child should be." She hesitated, then added softly, "She reminds me of my younger sister, Rose, the same spirit." "You have family back in Helena?" he asked, realizing how little he knew of her past. Willow's expression clouded. "Had. My parents died of typhoid when I was 16. Rose followed 2 years later, the same illness." She resumed her sewing, but her stitches were no longer quite as even. That's when Edward appeared, offering security, a future. "I was so grateful. I didn't see what he really was until it was almost too late." Thaddeus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What will you do when the snow clears?" She looked up, uncertainty plain on her face. "I don't know. I have a little money, enough perhaps to reach California. I thought I might find work there as a teacher or governess." "It's a long journey for a woman alone," he observed, not unkindly. "I'm aware of the dangers, Mr. Tucker, but I see no alternative." "Thaddeus," he corrected gently. "After all this time, you might as well use my name." A faint smile touched her lips. "Thaddeus, then, and I'm Willow, not Miss Vance." They sat in companionable silence for a time, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the soft whisper of needle through fabric. Thaddeus found himself studying her face in the firelight, the gentle curve of her cheek, the determined set of her jaw, the occasional strand of dark hair that escaped her simple bun. "You could stay," he said suddenly, the words escaping before he'd fully formed the thought. Willow's head snapped up, her expression one of disbelief. "What? Here," he clarified, committed now. "You could stay here. We're remote enough that no one from Helena would easily find you. Lily needs education I can't provide." "And I," he faltered, unaccustomed to expressing such personal thoughts. "You what?" she prompted softly. "I've grown used to having you here," he admitted. "The cabin feels like a home again." Color rose in Willow's cheeks. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose indefinitely." "It's not imposing if you're invited," Thaddeus countered. "Think about it at least." She nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "I will." The following days brought a new awareness between them, subtle glances, brief touches when passing objects, conversations that stretched later into the evening after Lily was asleep. Thaddeus found himself noticing things about Willow he'd overlooked before. How she hummed softly while kneading bread, the dimple that appeared in her left cheek when she truly smiled, the graceful way she moved through even the most mundane tasks. For her part, Willow seemed to relax more fully into life at the cabin. She began suggesting improvements, reorganizing the kitchen storage, adding curtains made from spare fabric, planting herb seeds in small boxes by the sunniest window. Small changes that transformed the functional space into something warmer, more inviting. 2 weeks after her arrival, the weather finally broke. Morning dawned clear and bright, the temperature noticeably milder. Standing on the porch, Thaddeus knew the snow would soon begin to melt, making the trails passable again. Willow joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the lingering chill. "Spring's coming early this year," she observed, her breath still visible in the air. Another week, maybe two, and the main trails will be clear enough for travel, he confirmed, watching her face carefully. She nodded, her expression unreadable. I should prepare then. Have you decided? About staying? Willow turned to face him, conflict evident in her eyes. Your offer means more than I can express. But Thaddeus, what happens when Edward eventually tracks me here? He has resources, connections. He won't simply forget me. Let him come, Thaddeus said with quiet confidence. I've faced worse than a spoiled businessman who likes to hit women. It's not just about physical danger, she insisted. He could bring legal trouble, claim I stole from him, that we're harboring a fugitive. I don't want to bring that kind of chaos into Lily's life. Thaddeus stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. Lily's happier with you here than I've seen her in years. So am I. He hesitated, then took her hand. I know it's soon and we've known each other only a short time, but I think we could build something good here. The three of us. Willow's eyes widened. Thaddeus, I'm not proposing marriage, he clarified quickly. Not yet anyway. Just asking you to consider this place your home for as long as you want it. She looked down at their joined hands. And if Edward comes, then we face him together, Thaddeus said firmly. I won't let him hurt you again. Willow was silent for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes shone with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. All right, I'll stay at least until we're sure he's not following. It wasn't the wholehearted acceptance he'd hoped for, but it was enough for now. Thaddeus squeezed her hand gently, and they stood together watching the sun climb higher in the winter sky. As the days lengthened and winter reluctantly released its grip on the land, life at the Tucker cabin fell into a new rhythm. Thaddeus began preparations for spring planting, while Willow took charge of Lily's education, creating structured lessons each morning followed by practical skills in the afternoon. Together, they expanded the small kitchen garden, planning for vegetables that would sustain them through the next winter. In the evenings, after Lily was asleep, Thaddeus and Willow would sit by the fire, talking late into the night. He told her about his years in the army, his journey west, meeting Maria and their early struggles to establish the homestead. She shared stories of her childhood in Helena, her brief time as a student at a ladies' seminary in St. Louis, her dreams of someday opening a small school of her own. With each passing day, the specter of Edward Blackwell seemed to recede further into the background, though Willow still occasionally glanced nervously toward the trail when unexpected sounds broke the mountain silence. Spring arrived in earnest by mid-March, bringing with it wildflowers dotting the meadow beyond the cabin and the return of songbirds to the surrounding pines. Thaddeus rode to Pine Tree Junction for supplies, returning with not only the expected necessities but also candy for Lily, proper writing paper for Willow's lessons, and most surprisingly letters for both him and Willow. Letters? Willow asked, anxiety immediately tightening her features. Who would write to me here? No one knows where I am. Thaddeus handed her the envelope. Postmark says Helena, but it came through the territorial marshal's office. With trembling fingers, Willow broke the seal and unfolded the paper within. As she read, her expression transformed from fear to disbelief, and finally to something like cautious hope. Edward is dead, she whispered, looking up at Thaddeus with wide eyes. Killed in a dispute with a business rival 3 weeks ago. Thaddeus set down his own letter, a routine notice about property taxes, and moved to her side. Are you certain? She nodded, scanning the letter again. It's from Daniel Parker, the territorial marshal. Apparently Edward had filed a report claiming I'd stolen jewelry before disappearing. The marshal investigated after Edward's death and found evidence that the jewelry in question had been pawned by Edward himself months ago. She looked up, tears gathering in her eyes. "The marshal has closed the case. I'm not wanted for anything." Thaddeus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That's good news, then." "Yes," she agreed, though her voice held a note of uncertainty. "I'm free to go wherever I choose now. No need to hide." The implications of her words hung in the air between them. The practical reason for her staying safety from pursuit no longer existed. "And is that what you want?" Thaddeus asked carefully. "To leave?" Willow looked around the cabin that had become so much her home over the past weeks at the curtains she'd sewn, the corner she'd arranged as a classroom for Lily, the chair by the fire where she sat each evening. Finally, her gaze returned to Thaddeus. "No," she said softly. "That's not what I want at all." Relief washed over him. "Good," he said simply, reaching for her hand. "Because I'd like you to stay, not out of necessity or fear, but because you want to, because Lily and I need you here." Willow stepped closer, her free hand coming to rest lightly on his chest. "Is that the only reason?" Thaddeus smiled, his heart hammering beneath her palm. "No," he admitted. "I want you to stay because these past weeks have shown me what it means to truly share a life with someone again. Because when you smile, I can't think straight. Because somehow, in the middle of a blizzard, you found your way not just to my door, but into my heart." Tears spilled down Willow's cheeks, but her smile was radiant. "Then I'll stay. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I've found where I belong." Thaddeus pulled her gently into his arms, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home. By summer, wildflowers carpeted the meadow surrounding the Tucker cabin. Lily had taken to gathering bouquets each morning, placing them in jars around the house, and skipping through the tall grass, singing made-up songs about butterflies and adventure. On a particularly golden afternoon in late June, Thaddeus stood on the porch, watching Willow and Lily in the garden. His daughter was carefully watering seedlings while Willow pointed out which plants were vegetables and which were weeds to be pulled. The scene filled him with a contentment he'd thought lost forever after Maria's death. That evening, after a simple dinner of fresh trout and early peas from the garden, Thaddeus surprised Willow by asking Lily to fetch something from his bedside drawer. The little girl returned, solemnly carrying a small wooden box carved with intricate leaf patterns. "What's this?" Willow asked as Lily placed it in her hands. "Open it," Thaddeus encouraged. Inside, nestled on a scrap of velvet, lay a simple gold ring set with a small pearl. It wasn't fancy or elaborate, but its elegance suited Willow perfectly. "It was my grandmother's," Thaddeus explained. "Maria wore it until she died. I've been saving it, hoping someday Lily might want it." He took a deep breath. "But now I think it belongs on your hand if you'll have it." Willow looked from the ring to Thaddeus, her eyes bright with emotion. "Are you asking?" "I'm asking you to be my wife," he confirmed. "To make official what we already know, that you belong here with us." "Yes," Lily interjected before Willow could respond. "Say yes. Then you'll be my mother for real." Willow laughed through her tears, looking at the eager child. "I'd be honored to be your mother, Lily." She turned back to Thaddeus. "And yes, I will marry you, Thaddeus Tucker. With all my heart, yes." They were married 2 weeks later by the circuit preacher who visited Pine Tree Junction monthly. The ceremony was simple, held in the meadow before their cabin with only a handful of neighbors as witnesses, but filled with genuine joy. Lily served as flower girl, ring bearer, and self-appointed announcer, solemnly informing everyone that Willow was the lady who knocked on our door in the snow, and now she's staying forever. As summer faded into fall, and then winter returned, the Tucker cabin remained warm and bright. The woman who had once pounded desperately on its door now moved confidently through its rooms, no longer a stranger seeking temporary shelter, but the heart of a home built on compassion, respect, and love that had grown from the most unexpected beginning. On the anniversary of her arrival, during another snowstorm, though far less severe, Thaddeus presented Willow with a handcrafted sign to hang beside their door. Carved into the wood were simple words that brought tears to her eyes. "All who knock here in need will find welcome. So no one else has to stand in the cold like you did," he explained, holding her close. "I don't regret that day," Willow whispered, watching the snow fall gently outside. "It brought me to you and Lily. It brought me home." In the years that followed, the Tucker homestead thrived and expanded. Willow eventually opened a small school that served the scattered children of nearby ranches. Lily grew into a confident young woman with her father's strength and her stepmother's compassion. And the cabin that had once seemed too quiet to Thaddeus echoed with the laughter of not only his first daughter, but eventually 2 more children, a boy and a girl who grew up hearing the story of how their mother had appeared on their doorstep during the worst blizzard in memory, and how their sister had known, even before their father, that she belonged with them. The desperate knock that had once signaled Willow's darkest hour had become the beginning of her greatest joy, a reminder that sometimes salvation comes in the moment when hope seems most lost, and that the truest love often begins with an act of simple human kindness.